He bought an abandoned house, but never expected 3 alien girls were secretly living beneath it. Matthew Harrington wiped sweat from his brow as he turned the key in the lock. The ancient door creaked open, revealing his new home, a dilapidated 2-story structure on the outskirts of New Meridian, right where the human district faded into the alien quarter. The realtor, a 4-armed Procyon with perpetually twitching whiskers, had practically sprinted away after handing over the paperwork. "Well," Matthew muttered to himself, "it's not the Ritz, but it's mine." At 32, he'd finally achieved what felt impossible for most humans in this economy: property ownership. The house had cost every credit he'd saved during his decade-long stint in the Terran Defense Force. His muscles, honed from years of military service, tensed as he stepped inside, instinctively scanning for threats. The interior was worse than the listing had suggested: peeling wallpaper, stained floors, and the distinct smell of abandonment greeted him. Sunlight filtered through grimy windows, illuminating dancing dust particles. Matthew set down his duffel bag and ran a hand through his short, dark hair. "Nothing a little elbow grease can't fix," he reassured himself, though the confidence in his voice wavered. As he explored the ground floor, Matthew noticed something odd: a door beneath the staircase that hadn't appeared in any of the building schematics. It was small, reinforced with metal bands, and secured with an electronic lock that seemed far newer than anything else in the house. "That's strange," he whispered, approaching cautiously. Military instincts kicked in as he retrieved a multi-tool from his pocket. After a few minutes of careful manipulation, the lock disengaged with a soft click. The door swung open to reveal a concrete staircase descending into darkness. Matthew pulled out his pocket flashlight and began his descent, each step careful and measured. The air grew cooler as he ventured deeper, carrying a faint metallic scent he couldn't quite place. At the bottom, his beam of light swept across what appeared to be a surprisingly large basement. Unlike the decrepit house above, this space showed signs of habitation: makeshift bedding, containers of preserved food, and crude drawings on the walls. A sudden scuffling sound drew his attention to the far corner. His flashlight beam caught 3 pairs of wide, frightened eyes reflecting back at him like emeralds in the darkness. "Holy shit," Matthew breathed. 3 small figures huddled together against the wall. Their skin was pale green, almost luminescent in the flashlight's glow. Large almond-shaped eyes dominated their delicate faces, framed by long, silver-white hair that fell past their shoulders. They wore tattered white garments with strange metallic accents that seemed to pulse faintly with an inner light. They were unmistakably alien children. Verdani, if he remembered his xenobiology correctly. And they looked terrified. As Matthew took a step forward, the smallest one hissed, tiny clawed hands raised defensively. The other 2 followed suit, backing further into the corner. "Hey, easy now," Matthew said, lowering his flashlight to avoid blinding them. "I'm not going to hurt you." The tallest of the 3, still barely reaching his waist, spoke in halting English. "This, our place. We here first." Matthew crouched down to appear less threatening, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "This is my house now. I just bought it." "No," the same child protested. "We hide here. Safe here." "Hiding from what?" Matthew asked gently. The 3 exchanged nervous glances before the spokesperson answered, "Bad men. Star hunters. They find us, they take us back." Matthew felt his stomach tighten. He'd heard rumors during his service. Stories about trafficking rings that specialized in rare alien species. The Verdani were nearly extinct, their homeworld destroyed decades ago in the Cygnus conflict. "Look," he said after a moment of consideration, "I didn't know anyone was living here, but we can figure something out. Are you hungry?" The mention of food caused a visible change in their demeanor. The smallest one's stomach audibly growled, and she looked embarrassed. "I've got some ration packs upstairs. Not gourmet, but they're nutritionally balanced for most humanoid species." Matthew stood slowly. "I'll go get them. You can stay here if you want. Or come up. Your choice." He turned to leave, then paused. "My name's Matthew, by the way." "I'm Inila," said the tallest one, her voice slightly steadier. She pointed to the others. "This Mia and Talia." Matthew nodded. "Nice to meet you. I'll be right back." As he climbed the stairs, his mind raced. 3 alien children hiding in his basement, apparently on the run from traffickers. This wasn't exactly how he'd planned to start his civilian life, but something in those frightened eyes had stirred his protective instincts. By the time he returned with food and water, the girls had arranged themselves in a small semicircle at the base of the stairs, still wary, but no longer hiding. "Here," he said, distributing the ration packs. "Let's talk while you eat." Over the next hour, Matthew learned their story. The 3 were sisters, the last survivors of their family unit. They'd stowed away on a cargo ship after their parents were captured, eventually finding their way to Earth in this abandoned house nearly 6 months ago. "Look," Matthew finally said, "I'm not going to throw you out. The basement's big enough, and I wasn't planning to use it anyway. You can stay here if you help me fix up the place." "We help," Anila said quickly. "We good at fixing. Verdani build things." "Then we have a deal," Matthew replied, extending his hand. Anila stared at it for a moment before cautiously reaching out her small green hand to shake his. Neither Matthew nor the 3 Verdani children realized that this unlikely arrangement would soon be complicated by forces beyond their control, both from the stars above and much closer to home. The next morning, Matthew awoke to the sound of movement downstairs. For a moment, he tensed, military instincts kicking in, then remembered his unusual new housemates. Pulling on a t-shirt that stretched across his broad shoulders, he made his way to the kitchen. There he found Anila standing on a makeshift platform of stacked containers, carefully examining the ancient refrigeration unit. Her small green fingers traced the circuitry with surprising expertise. "Morning," Matthew said, causing her to jump slightly. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you." "Human machine very inefficient," she replied, recovering quickly. "Verdani can make better." Matthew raised an eyebrow. "You know how to fix refrigerators?" "Verdani children learn engineering from hatching," she stated matter-of-factly. "This simple. Need parts, though." "I'll see what I can find," Matthew promised, impressed. "Where are your sisters?" "Cleaning basement. We make proper living space." Matthew nodded, pouring himself a cup of water, the only functioning amenity so far. "I'm heading to the supply depot today. Need to get materials to start repairs." As he spoke, a soft chime indicated someone at the front door. Matthew froze, exchanging alarmed glances with Anila, who immediately scrambled down and darted toward the basement. Heart pounding, Matthew approached the door and checked the security viewer. Outside stood a humanoid female with striking copper-toned skin and hair that seemed to shimmer between deep purple and midnight blue. Her features were delicately alien, yet remarkably human-like, with high cheekbones and eyes that tilted slightly upward at the corners. She wore the uniform of New Meridian's Environmental Services. Taking a deep breath, Matthew opened the door. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying a melodic accent. "I am Nilla Terrace, District Environmental Inspector." She extended a slender hand. "You must be the new owner." "Matthew Harrington," he replied, shaking her hand and noting her firm grip. "Just moved in yesterday." Her eyes, a remarkable shade of amber, studied him with undisguised interest. "Human military, yes? Your posture is distinctive." "Former TDF," Matthew confirmed, surprised by her perception. 10 years service. Neela nodded. "Impressive. I'm conducting routine inspections for the quarter. May I come in?" Matthew hesitated, acutely aware of the 3 alien children hiding below. "It's not a great time. The place is a disaster. That's why I bought it so cheap." "Precisely why I need to inspect," she countered smoothly. "Abandoned properties often develop environmental hazards, toxic mold spores, pest infestations, structural degradation that can affect neighboring buildings." Her logic was sound, but Matthew remained wary. "Can we schedule for next week? Give me time to clear some of the debris?" Neela's gaze sharpened, a flicker of suspicion crossing her features. "Regulations require inspection within 48 hours of new occupancy in mixed species districts. For safety reasons." Matthew recognized the impasse. Refusing would only increase her suspicion. "All right," he conceded, stepping aside. "But I warned you about the condition." As Neela entered, Matthew noticed the subtle grace of her movements. She carried a scanner that hummed softly as she moved through the main floor, professionally documenting various issues. "The previous owners left quite suddenly," she remarked casually. "There were rumors." "What kind of rumors?" Matthew asked. carefully positioning himself between her and the basement door. Unusual energy signatures, nocturnal activities. She glanced at him. The Protean who sold you this property was quite eager to be rid of it. Can't imagine why, Matthew replied dryly, gesturing to the peeling wallpaper. Neela's lips curved in amusement, revealing teeth slightly more pointed than human norm. The expression transformed her serious demeanor, making her unexpectedly attractive. You have plans for renovation? She asked, running her scanner along a wall. Starting today, I've got construction experience from my service days. A man who builds rather than destroys. Refreshing for a soldier, she commented, her tone softening. Their eyes met, and Matthew felt an unexpected spark of connection. There was something compelling about her directness, her confidence. A soft thud from the basement broke the moment. Nyla's head turned sharply toward the sound. How settling, Matthew said quickly. Old foundations. Indeed. Her expression made it clear she wasn't convinced. I'll need to check all levels, including any basement areas. Matthew's mind raced. The basement access is blocked by debris. I haven't cleared it yet. My scanner indicates a clear path to a lower level, she countered, moving toward the staircase, and recent activity. Before Matthew could formulate another excuse, a crash from outside drew their attention. They rushed to the window to see a delivery drone had collided with Matthew's parked vehicle. Damn it, he muttered, genuinely distracted by this new problem. Neela's scanner beeped, drawing her attention. I need to document this incident as well. Vehicle accidents in residential zones require environmental assessment. As they stepped outside to examine the damage, Matthew caught a glimpse of tiny faces peering from a basement window. The girls had created the diversion. While Neela documented the minor collision, Matthew noticed her stealing glances at him. Despite the tension of the moment, he found himself appreciating her professional competence and the way sunlight played across her copper skin. I'll need to return to complete the inspection, she said finally, tucking her scanner away. Of course, Matthew agreed, relieved for the reprieve. As she turned to leave, she paused. The local market has excellent renovation supplies. I could show you sometime. The vendors respect military service. The offer caught Matthew off guard. That would be helpful. Tomorrow, perhaps? I finish my shift at sundown. Matthew nodded, surprised to find himself looking forward to it despite the complications. Until then, Matthew Harrington, she said, his name rolling off her tongue in a way that sent an unexpected warmth through him. Try not to have any more accidents. As she walked away, Matthew couldn't help but notice the graceful sway of her movements. He was equally certain she was fully aware of his observation. Inside, the three Verdani girls emerged from hiding, looking both frightened and pleased with themselves. She's suspicious, Enola stated flatly, but pretty. You like her? Matthew sighed. His life had just gotten considerably more complicated. The alien market of New Meridian pulsed with life as dusk settled over the district. Holographic signs in dozens of languages advertised wares from across the galaxy, while the mingled scents of exotic foods and strange spices filled the air. Matthew felt distinctly out of place, one of the few humans in a sea of alien faces. You look like you're expecting an ambush, Neela commented, appearing beside him in civilian attire. Without her inspector's uniform, she wore a form-fitting garment that shimmered with subtle iridescence, accentuating her copper skin. Force of habit, Matthew admitted, relaxing slightly at her presence. Not many humans venture this deep into the alien quarter. They're lost, she replied, taking his arm with surprising familiarity. The best parts of New Meridian are where cultures intersect. Her touch sent an unexpected warmth through him. Up close, he noticed faint patterns in her skin, almost like circuitry, that caught the market's colorful lights. What exactly are you? He asked and then winced. Sorry, that came out wrong. Neela laughed, a melodic sound that turned heads nearby. Vayreen. We're a spacefaring species from the Cygnus arm, relatively new to Earth, only been here about 30 years. Same region as the Verdani, Matthew observed, then immediately regretted the slip. Nyla's amber eyes sharpened with interest. You know your xenobiology. Most humans can barely distinguish between Arcturians and Procyon. Military training, he explained quickly. Had to learn who we might encounter out there. She studied him with that penetrating gaze that made him feel transparent. The Verdani are nearly extinct. Their world was destroyed in the same conflict that drove my people from our home system. I'm sorry, Matthew said genuinely. It wasn't humans who did it, she replied, her expression softening. Your species was actually among the few who offered sanctuary afterward. They moved deeper into the market, stopping at various stalls. Nyla proved invaluable, negotiating prices for construction materials in languages Matthew couldn't begin to comprehend. Her familiarity with the vendors secured him deals no human could have managed alone. How did you end up as an environmental inspector? He asked as they paused at a food stall. Vayrine are naturally attuned to environmental pattern, she explained. We can sense imbalances, contamination. Earth authorities found it useful. As she spoke, Matthew noticed her attention briefly shift to something over his shoulder. Following her gaze, he spotted two tall figures in dark attire standing unnaturally still amid the market's bustle. Their features were obscured by hoods, but something about their posture raised the hairs on Matthew's neck. Friends of yours? He asked quietly. Hardly, Nyla murmured, subtly positioning herself closer to him. Krell mercenaries. They don't usually come to this sector. They're watching us, Matthew observed, military instincts fully engaged. Not us, Nyla corrected. You. A chill ran through him as he thought of the three Verdani children alone in his house. Maybe we should head back. Nyla nodded, but instead of moving toward the exit, she pulled him deeper into the market. Not directly, let's see if they follow. They wound through increasingly narrow passages between stalls, Nyla leading with confident familiarity. When they emerged into a small courtyard illuminated by floating, bioluminescent orbs, she stopped. This is the heart of the old market, she explained, her voice lower. My people gather here sometimes. The space was beautiful. Ancient stone walls covered with climbing plants that pulsed with gentle light. They were alone, the sounds of the market muffled by distance. Are we hiding or sightseeing? Matthew asked, though he couldn't deny the setting's romantic atmosphere. Both, Nyla replied, stepping closer. Those mercenaries won't follow here. This place is protected. By what? By whom? She corrected, her eyes reflecting the floating lights. My people have agreements with the local authorities. Cultural preservation zones. Matthew became acutely aware of how close they were standing. Is that why you brought me here? Cultural exchange? A smile played at her lips. Perhaps. Humans fascinate us. Your species is so young compared to most galactic civilizations, yet you've accomplished so much. You're unpredictable, adaptable. Is that a compliment or a warning? Matthew asked, his voice dropping lower. Both, she whispered, closing the distance between them. Your kind burns so brightly, it's intoxicating. Their lips met in a kiss that started tentatively but quickly deepened. Matthew was surprised by the familiar yet alien sensation. Her lips warmer than a human's, the faint taste of something sweet and unfamiliar. His hands found her waist as hers explored the muscles of his shoulders. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Nyla's amber eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. I've wanted to do that since I first saw you, she admitted. Why didn't you? He asked, his hands still resting on her hips. Professional ethics, she replied with a small smile. And I wasn't certain if humans and Vayrine were compatible. Are we? Matthew asked, genuinely curious. Physiologically? Yes, our species are remarkably similar in fundamental ways. Her fingers traced patterns on his chest. Emotionally, that's more complicated. How so? Vayrine formed deep bonds quickly. It's biological, a remnant of our evolutionary past when our world had unpredictable climate shifts. We had to form trust rapidly to survive. Matthew considered this. And humans. You're more cautious, more guarded. Her hand rested over his heart. But when you commit, you do so with remarkable intensity. The moment was interrupted by a distant commotion from the market. Matthew tensed, but Nyla placed a calming hand on his arm. We should go, she said, but not back through the main market. She led him through a series of passages that eventually emerged near the district's edge, not far from his house. As they walked the final blocks, Matthew found himself torn between the desire to invite her in and the knowledge that doing so would risk exposing the Verdani children. At his doorstep, Neela solved his dilemma. "I should return to my quarters. Early inspection tomorrow." "Thank you for tonight," Matthew said. "The materials, the tour, everything." "We've barely begun," she replied, her amber eyes holding promise. She leaned in for another kiss, this one briefer, but no less intense. "Be careful, Matthew Harrington. Those mercenaries were not in the market by coincidence." Before he could ask what she meant, she turned and walked away, the iridescent fabric of her garment catching the streetlights. Inside, Matthew found the 3 Verdani girls waiting anxiously, their large eyes wide with relief at his return. "Bad men in market," Anila stated without preamble. "Looking for us." Matthew froze. "How do you know?" "We see through security feeds," Mia explained, pointing to a jury-rigged device on the table, clearly assembled from parts he'd brought home earlier. "You built a surveillance scanner?" Matthew asked, impressed despite his concern. "Simple tech," Talia said with a shrug. "Need to watch for hunters." Matthew crouched down to their level. "The men in the market? Are they the ones who are after you?" Anila nodded solemnly. "Krell, work for highest bidder. Very dangerous. And very close," Matthew muttered, his thoughts turning to Nyla. How much did she know? And whose side was she really on? Matthew couldn't sleep. The image of the Krell mercenaries kept replaying in his mind, along with Neela's warning. He sat at his kitchen table, cleaning his old service pistol, a habit that had always helped him think. "You were soldier," Anala observed, appearing silently beside him. The oldest Verdani child had a disconcerting ability to move without making a sound. "Yes," Matthew acknowledged, setting the weapon aside. "TDF, Special Operations." "You fought in Cygnus conflict," she stated rather than asked. Matthew looked at her sharply. "How did you know that?" "Your eyes change when you think of it. Human eyes show memory." He sighed, impressed by her perception. "Yes, I was there for the final campaigns. Saw things I wish I hadn't." "You saw Krell before," Anila pressed, her large eyes unblinking. "I've encountered them," Matthew admitted cautiously. "The one in Market, with scar on neck. You know him." Matthew froze. He hadn't noticed any scar, but he'd only caught glimpses of the mercenaries. "What are you saying?" "We enhance surveillance feed," Inela explained. "See details. He has military insignia tattoo. Krell 7th Division." The revelation hit Matthew like a physical blow. The 7th Division, he'd fought against them in the Battle of Proxima Station. They'd been responsible for some of the worst atrocities of the conflict. "Commander Vrax," Matthew whispered, the name surfacing from buried memories. "Yes," Anila confirmed. "He led attack on our colony. Before we escaped." Matthew's mind raced. This was no coincidence. If Commander Vrax was here, the stakes were far higher than he'd realized. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Matthew motioned for Anila to hide, then approached cautiously, pistol in hand. "It's me," came Nyla's voice, uncharacteristically urgent. Matthew opened the door to find her looking disheveled, her copper skin flushed with exertion. She wore her inspector's uniform, but it was wrinkled and stained. "I don't have much time," she said, pushing past him into the house. "They know I accessed the files." "What files?" Matthew asked, securing the door behind her. "The ones about you." Her amber eyes met his. "And about what really happened at Proxima Station." Matthew felt the blood drain from his face. "How do you—" "I work for the Interspecies Security Bureau," she interrupted. "My environmental inspector cover gives me access to restricted areas and databases. I've been investigating corruption within New Meridian's administration." "You've been spying on me," Matthew said flatly. "At first, yes," she admitted. "Your purchase of this house raised flags. It was previously owned by a known associate of the Krell trafficking network." "And now?" "Now I'm compromised," she said bitterly. "My superiors are working with the traffickers. When I accessed your military file and the classified Proxima Station reports, they locked me out of the system." Matthew studied her, looking for deception, but finding only genuine fear in something else. Concern for him. "Why come here? Why warn me?" Neela stepped closer, her hand reaching for his face. "Because what I found in those files showed me who you really are. What you did for those Verdani refugees at Proxima. or how you disobeyed orders to save them when your commanders were willing to sacrifice them as collateral damage. The memory surfaced unwillingly. The screams, the desperate faces, his decision to evacuate civilians against direct orders. It had ended his career advancement but saved dozens of lives. You know about the girl, Matthew realized. I suspected, Neela confirmed. The energy signatures in your basement match Verdani biopatterns, but I didn't report it. From the shadows, Anila emerged, followed by her sisters. She tells truth, the child announced, her heart rhythm steady. Neela knelt to the children's level. You're the last free-born Verdani in this sector. The others are all in Krell protective custody, being harvested for their genetic material. Harvested? Matthew asked, alarmed. Verdani children can interface directly with technology, Nyla explained. Their neural pathways are uniquely adaptable. The Krell are extracting and synthesizing this ability for weapons development. And Commander Vrass? Matthew asked. Leading the operation here on Earth, Neela confirmed. He recognized you in the market. That's why I brought you through the cultural zone. Varys' territory is shielded from most surveillance. She stood, moving closer to Matthew. He hasn't forgotten what you did at Proxima. Saving those Verdani cost him a valuable shipment and a promotion. So I'm a target too, Matthew concluded. We both are now, Nyla said softly. Their eyes met, and the tension between them shifted from suspicion to something more primal. Matthew was acutely aware of her proximity, the subtle scent of her skin, the way her uniform clung to her form. Why risk everything for us? He asked, his voice lower. Because my people were once like the Verdani, hunted, exploited. Humans were the only species who stood against it. Her hand found his chest, resting over his heart. And because there's something about you, Matthew Harrington, something I haven't felt before. The admission hung between them, electric with possibility. Matthew's hand covered hers, their fingers intertwining. We have maybe 6 hours before they track me here, Nyla whispered. We need to move the children somewhere safe. I know a place, Matthew said. An old military bunker outside the city, but we'll need supplies, transportation. I have access to an unmarked vehicle, Neela offered, and I've disabled the tracking on my uniform. Their planning was interrupted by Talia, the youngest Verdani, tugging at Matthew's pant leg. If bad men come, what about House? You spend all savings. The innocent question struck Matthew unexpectedly. In the midst of danger, this child was worried about his financial security. Houses can be replaced, he told her gently. People can't. Nyla's expression softened at his words. That's the difference between humans and most species, she murmured. You value life over possessions instinctively. Not all humans, Matthew corrected. No, enough of you, she insisted, her amber eyes holding his. Enough to matter. As they began gathering essentials for their escape, the tension between them remained, a current of unspoken desire amplified by danger. Their hands brushed repeatedly, each contact sending electricity through Matthew's body. Later, as the Verdani children packed their few belongings, Nyla pulled Matthew into the kitchen. If something happens to me, she began. Matthew silenced her with a finger to her lips. It won't. You can't know that, she insisted. Promise me you'll get the children to safety, regardless. I promise, he said solemnly. But we're all getting through this. Her response was to pull him into a fierce kiss, her body pressing against his with urgent need. Matthew responded in kind, his hands tangling in her shimmering hair as the kiss deepened. When they parted, both breathing heavily, Neela's amber eyes seemed to glow. When this is over, she promised, her voice husky with desire, we'll have time to explore this properly. Matthew traced the faint patterns on her copper skin. I'm going to hold you to that. We can't leave yet, Mia announced suddenly as Matthew and Neela finished packing emergency supplies. The middle Verdani child stood in the doorway to the basement, her expression unusually determined. We don't have a choice, Matthew explained gently. The Krell will be here soon. Let them come, Mia replied with startling confidence. House ready for them? Matthew and Nyla exchanged confused glances. What do you mean, ready? Nyla asked. Instead of answering, Mia gestured for them to follow. Descending into the basement, Matthew was stunned by what he saw. The formerly sparse space had been transformed. The walls were lined with what appeared to be circuitry, thin, luminescent filaments that pulsed with soft green light. In the center of the room stood a makeshift console cobbled together from parts Matthew had brought home for renovations. "What is all this?" he breathed, running his fingers along the wall patterns. "Defense system," Inila explained, appearing from behind the console. "We build while you work upstairs." "You've been fortifying the house," Nyla realized, her amber eyes wide with amazement. "How?" "Verdani technology," Talia said proudly. "We connect with machines, make them better." Matthew crouched to examine the console more closely. "You built this from construction materials and household electronics?" Anila nodded. "Simple components. We enhance." "This is why the Krell wants you," Nyla murmured. This ability is extraordinary." "What exactly can this system do?" Matthew asked, military training kicking in as he assessed their tactical position. "Many things," Anila replied. "Shields for windows and doors, sonic deterrence, emergency escape tunnel." "Escape tunnel?" Matthew repeated incredulously. Talia pointed to what had appeared to be a storage closet. "Leads to sewer system. We dig while you sleep." Matthew shook his head in disbelief. "You've been preparing for this all along." "Always prepare," Anila stated solemnly. "First rule of survival." Before Matthew could respond, a harsh and electronic tone filled the room. The console flashed red, and a holographic display materialized, showing the street outside. "Proximity alert," Mia explained, her small green hands dancing across the controls with practiced ease. The display zoomed in on a public announcement board across the street. The normal advertisements flickered and disappeared, replaced by the face of Commander Vrax. The Krell's features were harsh and angular, with a prominent scar running down the side of his neck, exactly where Anila had described. "Attention, residents of New Meridian District 7, Vrax's voice boomed through the streets. "This is a security announcement. We have detected dangerous fugitives in your sector. 3 Verdani bioweapons and their human accomplice." Matthew felt his blood run cold. "Bioweapons?" "Lie," Anila hissed. "We not weapons." Vrax continued, "These fugitives pose an imminent threat to public safety. By authority of the Interplanetary Security Accord, we are implementing containment protocol. You have 1 hour to evacuate the sector before purification procedures begin." "He's threatening to purge the entire district," Neela whispered, horror evident in her voice. "Thousands of innocent residents." "Typical Krell tactics," Matthew growled. "Threaten civilians to flush out targets." The announcement repeated, sending residents into panic. The display showed aliens of various species hurriedly leaving their homes, clutching possessions and children. "We must surrender," Talia said quietly. "Too many people get hurt." "No," Matthew replied firmly. "That's exactly what they want you to think. If we surrender, you'll disappear into a Krell laboratory and everyone will forget about the purification that never actually happened." Neela touched his arm. "You've seen this before?" Matthew nodded grimly. "At Proxima, they threatened to decompress an entire habitat section unless the Verdani refugees surrendered. We evacuated the civilians instead and held our position." "What happened?" Neela asked. "The Krell attacked anyway, but with the civilians gone, we could fight without restraint." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "They didn't expect that." Matthew turned to the Verdani children. "Can your system defend against a direct assault?" "Yes," Enila confirmed. "For short time, maybe 1 hour." "That's all we need," Matthew decided, military training taking over as he formulated a plan. "We make them think we're cornered, then escape through your tunnel while they're focused on the front approach." "But the other residents," Neela protested. "We can't just leave them to face the purification." Matthew's expression hardened. "We won't. We're going to expose Vrax's operation to everyone." He turned to the console. "Anila, can you access the district's emergency broadcast system?" The oldest Verdani's eyes widened with understanding. "Yes, easy." "And can you access Vrax's secure communications?" A mischievous smile spread across her small face. "Already done. We monitor since yesterday." Perfect, Matthew said, a plan forming. Here's what we're going to do. As they finalized their strategy, the proximity sensors chimed again. The display showed a Krell transport landing at the end of the street, disgorging armed mercenaries who began setting up containment barriers. They're earlier than expected, Neela observed tensely. Good, Matthew replied. Less time for them to prepare properly. He turned to face her fully, suddenly aware this might be their last quiet moment together. Nyla, if this goes wrong... She silenced him with a fierce kiss, her copper-toned hands framing his face. It won't go wrong. You're human. You always find a way. The simple faith in her words struck Matthew deeply. What makes you so sure? Because I've studied your species, she murmured against his lips. When protecting others, humans become something more than themselves. It's why the Krell fear you more than any other species. Their moment was interrupted by Mia. They coming. 6 Krell approaching front door. Matthew reluctantly pulled away from Nyla, his body still humming with desire in the promise of what awaited them if they survived. Activate the shields. Let's show Commander Vrax what happens when he threatens a human's home. Enila's hands danced across the console, and the house seemed to come alive around them. The walls hummed with energy as invisible barriers materialized over every entrance and window. House secure, she announced proudly. On the display, they watched as the first Krell mercenary reached the front door, weapon raised. When he tried to breach the entrance, a pulse of energy sent him flying backward into his companions. That should get their attention, Matthew said with grim satisfaction. Nella stared at him with newfound appreciation. You're actually enjoying this, aren't you? Let's just say I've been waiting for a rematch with Vrax for a long time, Matthew admitted. And this time, I've got home field advantage. Outside, the Krell regrouped, clearly surprised by the resistance. Through the surveillance feed, they could see Commander Vrax himself approaching, his scarred face contorted with rage. Harrington, he bellowed, evidently aware of who awaited him inside. You can't escape this time. Surrender the Verdenis specimens, and perhaps I'll consider letting you live. Matthew leaned toward the console. Anila, can he hear me through this system? The child nodded, activating a communication channel. Matthew smiled coldly. Hello, Commander. Nicest scar. Souvenir from Proxima Station. Vrax's face twisted with hatred. You'll pay for your interference, human. This time, there's no Terran defense force to hide behind. I don't need them, Matthew replied calmly. And I don't think you want to be broadcasting your real intentions to the entire district, do you? For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Vrax's features. What are you talking about? Check your comm channel, Commander. It's not as private as you think. A thunderous explosion rocked the house as the Krell deployed heavier weaponry. The protective shields flickered ominously. Shield integrity at 40%, Enila announced, her small green fingers dancing across the console. Cannot hold much longer. Matthew checked his service pistol. How much time do we need to complete the broadcast? 3 minutes to access all district channels, Neela replied, working alongside Mia to patch into New Meridian's communication grid. We need to upload Vrax's private orders and the evidence of the harvesting operation. Another blast shook the foundation. Dust rained from the ceiling as hairline cracks appeared in the walls. Shield at 25%, Enila updated grimly. Matthew made his decision. Get the children through the escape tunnel. I'll hold them off. That's suicide, Neela protested, her amber eyes flashing with concern. It's tactics, Matthew countered. Vrax wants me as much as he wants the children. If he thinks I'm still here, he'll focus on me while you complete the broadcast and escape. I'm not leaving you, Neela insisted. You have to. The children need protection, and you need to make sure that broadcast goes out. Matthew touched her copper-toned cheek. This isn't my first last stand. Talia approached, her young face solemn. We prepared something for you. She handed him what appeared to be a modified construction tool, now resembling a crude energy weapon. House power connected, will work for a short time. Matthew accepted it with surprise. You're full of secrets, aren't you? Survival, she replied simply. The shields flickered again as another blast hit. The console emitted a warning tone. Perimeter breach imminent, Enila announced. North wall failing. Go, Matthew ordered. Now. Nyla pulled him into a fierce kiss, her body pressing against his. with desperate intensity. "You better survive this, Matthew Harrington," she whispered against his lips. "We have unfinished business." "Count on it," he promised, memorizing the feel of her in his arms. As Nyla ushered the children toward the escape tunnel, Matthew ascended the stairs to the main floor. He positioned himself strategically, using the house's layout to his advantage. Years of military training took over as he mentally mapped firing angles and potential cover. The front door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. Krell mercenaries poured through the breach, weapons raised. Matthew fired the modified tool, surprised when it emitted a pulse that sent 2 attackers flying backward. "Not bad," he muttered, ducking behind a wall as return fire scorched the spot where he'd been standing. Through the commotion, a familiar voice bellowed, "Find the Verdani specimens and bring me Harrington, alive!" Commander Vrax himself stepped through the ruined doorway, his imposing figure silhouetted against the streetlights. He wore combat armor that accentuated his powerful physique, and a wicked-looking blade hung at his side. "I know you can hear me, Harrington," Vrax called out. "Your shields are failing, your defenses are breached. There's nowhere to run this time." Matthew moved silently through the house, using the shadows to his advantage. "Who's running, Vrax?" he called back, his voice echoing to mask his position. "I bought this house fair and square. You're the one trespassing." A harsh laugh answered him. "Still the same arrogant human. You cost me everything at Proxima Station. My rank, my standing with the High Command." "You cost yourself," Matthew countered, moving to a new position. "Targeting civilians tends to look bad on performance reviews." "Those weren't civilians," Vrax snarled. "They were assets, property, just like these Verdani specimens you're harboring." "They're children," Matthew corrected, anger fueling his resolve. "Something your species wouldn't understand." He fired another pulse, catching a mercenary who had ventured too close. The weapon sputtered afterward, its charge depleted. Matthew discarded it and drew his pistol. A sudden silence fell over the house. Matthew could hear the mercenaries moving, searching methodically. He checked his chronometer. 2 minutes had passed. Neela needed more time. "Your weapon is depleted," Vrax's voice came from alarmingly close. "And my patience is at an end." Matthew turned to find the commander standing in the doorway, his scarred face twisted in a predatory smile. He'd removed his helmet, revealing the full extent of the burn scar that ran from his neck up to his jaw, a souvenir from their last encounter. "Let's settle this properly," Vrax suggested, drawing his blade. "Warrior to warrior?" "Didn't take you for the honorable type," Matthew replied, holstering his pistol. He'd need to buy more time, and this was his best option. "Honor is for the victorious to define," Vrax said, advancing slowly. Matthew backed into the living room, giving himself space to maneuver. He'd fought Krell in hand-to-hand combat before. They were stronger but slower than humans, relying on overwhelming force rather than technique. Vrax lunged suddenly, his blade slicing through the air, where Matthew's chest had been a moment before. Matthew countered with a swift strike to the Krell's exposed side, earning a grunt of pain. "First blood to you, human," Vrax acknowledged, circling warily. "But I've learned since Proxima." They exchanged a flurry of blows, Matthew using speed and precision against Vrax's superior strength. The house creaked around them, damaged from the assault, as they fought amid the ruins of Matthew's dream home. A lucky strike caught Matthew across the arm, opening a shallow cut. He stumbled back, feeling warm blood seeping through his sleeve. "Your species bleeds so easily," Vrax observed with satisfaction, "yet you continue to fight. It's almost admirable." "We're stubborn that way," Matthew replied, using the moment to catch his breath. Vrax advanced again, more cautiously this time. "The Verdani children, where are they?" "Safe from you," Matthew answered, feigning left before driving a solid punch into Vrax's wounded side. The Krell commander doubled over momentarily but recovered quickly, sweeping his blade in a wide arc that forced Matthew to leap backward. The move put him off balance, and Vrax capitalized, charging forward to slam Matthew against the wall. The impact knocked the wind from his lungs as Vrax pinned him, blade pressed against his throat. "Your defiance ends here," Vrax hissed, his face inches from Matthew's. "Where are the specimens?" Before Matthew could answer, the house's remaining systems surged to life. Every screen and communication device in the district simultaneously activated, broadcasting Virax's private communications throughout New Meridian. Extraction of neural tissue must be completed while specimens are conscious, Virax's recorded voice echoed. Maximum yield occurs during peak stress response. Dispose of expired specimens in standard biohazard protocols. The commander's eyes widened in shock as his own words condemned him. Outside, the sounds of confusion and outrage rose from the district's residents. Matthew smiled through bloody lips. "Sounds like your operation just went public, Commander." Virax's face contorted with rage. He raised his blade for a killing strike, only to be thrown violently backward as a pulse of energy struck him squarely in the chest. Neela stood in the doorway holding another of the Verdani's modified tools. Behind her, district security forces were arriving, drawn by the broadcast and the disturbance. Perfect timing, Matthew managed, sliding down the wall as exhaustion overtook him. Neela rushed to his side, cradling his face in her hands. "I told you we had unfinished business." "The children?" he asked. "Safe. They're with legitimate ISB agents. My actual colleagues, not the corrupted ones." She helped him to his feet. "Your broadcast worked. Virax's entire operation is exposed, or the Interspecies Council is already demanding an investigation." Outside, they could hear Krell mercenaries being apprehended. Virax himself lay unconscious, being secured by security officers. My house is destroyed," Matthew observed ruefully, looking around at the devastation. "But we're alive," Neela reminded him, pressing her body against his in a way that momentarily made him forget about the property damage. "And I happen to have excellent reconstruction contacts." 3 months later, Matthew stood in the newly rebuilt living room, marveling at the transformation. The house had been completely renovated, better than he could have afforded on his own, with subtle Verdani and Virene technological enhancements integrated throughout. "Admiring our handiwork?" Nyla asked, entering from the kitchen. She wore one of his shirts and little else, her copper skin glowing in the morning light. "Still can't believe we pulled this off," he admitted, pulling her into his arms. Their relationship had blossomed in the aftermath of the confrontation, passion turning to something deeper and more permanent. The sound of childish laughter drew their attention to the backyard, where the 3 Verdani girls played under the watchful eye of an ISB security drone. Their official status had been changed to protected cultural assets under a special human-alien cooperation initiative, the first of its kind. "The adoption paperwork came through," Nelio announced, her amber eyes bright with happiness. "They're officially ours now." Matthew felt an unexpected tightness in his throat. From fugitives to family in 3 months. Not bad. The Interspecies Council was quite impressed by a human willing to risk everything to protect alien children, Neela explained, tracing the scar on his arm, a permanent reminder of his confrontation with Virax. "It's opened diplomatic doors that have been closed for decades." "I didn't do it for diplomacy," Matthew said, watching the children through the window. "I know," Neela replied softly. "That's precisely why it matters so much. Your species acts from the heart. It's what makes humans so unpredictable and so valuable." She pressed herself against him in a way that sent heat coursing through his body. "And it's definitely what makes you so irresistible to this particular alien." Matthew laughed, lifting her effortlessly. "I bought a house and got a family I never expected," he mused. "Best investment I ever made." "Even with the property damage," she teased. "Even with that," he confirmed, carrying her toward their bedroom. "Some things are worth fighting for." As their lips met in a passionate kiss, Matthew reflected that his life had taken the most unexpected turn since discovering those 3 frightened eyes in his basement. He'd found not just a home, but a purpose in a love that transcended species, all because he'd been willing to look beyond appearances and stand up for what was right. In a universe full of differences, perhaps that was the most human quality of all.